All right, what we're going to do now is talk through what the retirement portfolio example or project should look like. I have put an example of the completed process on our website, and I'm going to talk us through this. This is Project 2020 ACE 444, again, retirement portfolio. The first thing I asked you to do is give asset descriptions, and remember that you're going to pick two assets. The assets that I used and which you should not use are Vanguard 500 Index Fund and Vanguard Long-Term Treasury Fund. Those assignments, we've talked about those before. The data that we've used for this particular assignment is also on the web. For each one of those assets, I want you to describe those assets, and here you can see I did that pretty quickly. I described it the Vanguard 500 Index Fund. It's an index fund that mimics the S&P 500. You can see I listed what the management is, the investment goal, types of stocks. Again, looking down this, you should be looking at the fund characteristics sheet and answering all those questions that are in there. I also included the 10 largest holdings. I like to see that, even though in this case it's just the 10 largest holdings in the S&P 500. Again, we can get all this information from Yahoo Finance. You will be picking, again, your own assets to put in here. I also described the Vanguard Long-Term Treasury Fund. Again, I did that fairly quickly. Again, go over to the bond funder characteristics sheet and list all of those things that we typically list there or look at. Again, here it's duration, type of bonds, credit quality, inflation protection, tax exemption. That'll tell you just about everything that you need to know. I then said we're going to come up with a series of historical return standard deviations and correlation coefficients. I got that data from May 19, 1986, November 3, 2020. I got that data from Yahoo Finance, and I report here for both of these the mean, and I used the geomean, standard deviation, and the coefficient of variation here. So all of those, give those, and also calculate the correlation coefficient. Again, the reason why we get that data from Yahoo Finance is so that we can calculate that correlation coefficient. I also attached, and you could do this too, a worksheet that shows the returns and their calculations. Next thing I asked is for an EV frontier. If you got two assets, you can do this in the two asset case. If you got more than two assets, you could do this with our Excel sheet that calculated for three or more asset or portfolios for the asset correlations. Here I give the weight on the VFINX, expected return and standard deviation, and also a graph. That graph actually came from our Excel sheet. I asked you for the asset splits and the rationale. I use 75% VFINX, 25% VUSTX. Again, this portfolio will have an expected return of 9.51, 13.76. And now I chose this portfolio based on Jack Bogle's suggestions. So you could do the same thing. Or I would suggest using this as your baseline, and then you tell me why you changed it. You could have 99% of your returns in VFINX. You're doing that to get a higher return. Rather than using VFINX, you could use a much riskier and presumably a higher expected return. There you would list that. So just list why you're choosing the funds for the use in your portfolio. All right. Well, I also asked you, you to tell me what the expected return is in 2060, 40 years from now. I calculated that using our wealth model. Again, that is on our website, so that has 1.9 million expected wealth level in 2060. 5% VAR is 536,089. So 5% of the time, you would expect wealth to be less than $536,000 in 40 years. You want that number to be as high as possible. If you can achieve this number and get this higher, that is a good thing. Again, give the graph of that so you can see that. All right, concerns and risks. Here I listed the major concern would be a dramatic fall in returns that occur in 2008 or like the Depression years in 29 to 35. And again, a protracted period of low returns could occur, and that would cause our VARs to be close to the 5 and 10% levels. Again, that's what I'm looking for here. You list the risks that you are concerned about. All right, the write-up of this portfolio or your retirement portfolio is pretty straightforward. You have to go out, pick the assets, and do the work.